Molefe Asante, Professor of African American Studies at Temple University, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dr. Molefe Asante.
Thank you very much, Miles. First of all, let me just congratulate you on this, because just this whole notion of Black heritage writers is a fantastic idea, and the motivation for young people to see the possibilities of just the spirit, the independent spirit, and the initiative of our people is a remarkable thing, because it will give a lot of inspiration to a lot of people. I mean, and first of all, it really combats this whole idea that we have never done anything or that we can't do anything, and it just shows you what individuals have done. I will never forget how inspirational it was for me to meet the brother who sailed around the globe. You know, just to meet him and talk to him was just such a beautiful inspiration. So when it comes to Philadelphia, my home, my city, you know, I have a lot of love for this city. This is the city. This is the city where you had, it was the largest city in the English-speaking world in 1800. It was the city, of course, as you know, where George Washington was the president. And we had many problems with George Washington in Philadelphia when he was here, because when George Washington came to Philadelphia from Virginia, he brought with him enslaved Africans. And the African people in Philadelphia didn't like it, and many of the whites didn't like it. I mean, because at that time, Pennsylvania, you know, had a law that you just couldn't have Africans who were enslaved living in this city longer than 6 months. And of course, he did all kinds of lies and did all kinds of stuff to try to make sure that his Africans could stay here. He would send them away for 3 weeks, and then he would bring them back, so they would not have been here continuously for the length of time. So this city has a lot of history, but the real deal is that the African population in Philadelphia, starting actually with the time that African people were first traded on what now is Front Street, and then into what was called Congo Square, which is now the Washington. It's a square, actually. It's Washington Square, I think it's called. It's behind the Independence Square. This city has had a population of African people who were very strong, very independent, very determined. We come out of the tradition of many of the early black business people like Purvis. We come out of the tradition of people who were political activists like Cato. Then there were, of course, the religious leaders, I mean, that everybody knows about, Absalom Jones and Richard Allen. These were always defenders of black people, and they defended black people in the late 1790s here in Philadelphia. And this is all before you get the real movement, the real abolitionist movement. You get the African people being defended here by these very strong individuals. When the movement got going for abolition of slavery in the South, you had also a situation that was very tricky in Pennsylvania, because the Pennsylvania legislature went back and forth on this. There was a time that black people in Pennsylvania were basically, we were freed, and then slavery came back. And then it was a situation where during the time that blacks were freed in the British territories, like Canada, around 1837, 34, 37, something like that, you had African people going from America to Canada, because if you stopped in Pennsylvania, you still were liable to be likely to be picked up and taken back into slavery. So, because the Pennsylvania laws were not in favor of the black people, and it was this struggle that finally, after a while, after a few years, Pennsylvania said, okay, total abolition, nobody can come here and snatch people and so forth. But During this period, Frederick Douglass was here. Frederick Douglass was here, and Frederick Douglass was here in the 1850s. Now, he was in Rochester, of course, in 1852, 53, 54, but he had also he came here to talk to Lucretia Mott. Most people don't know the name Lucretia Mott now, but she was a white woman, abolitionist, and Lucretia Mott was abolitionist, white woman abolitionist, who lived on the outskirts of Philadelphia. She became a friend to many of the abolitionists, black abolitionists, as well as to the white abolitionists. But she knew Frederick Douglass, and in fact, Frederick Douglass was one of the leading people to work in the interest, of course, of building a population of African people who were involved themselves personally in the struggle against slavery, to overturn slavery. And there's a little town, most people may not know this little town, but we'll put it on the record. There's a little town on the edge of Philadelphia, which is called Lamont. Lamont. Most people don't know. People around here may know about it, but a lot of people, even in Philadelphia, I've met people who never heard of Lamont. Lamont was important because Lamont was the town where they had what they call William Penn Camp. Camp William Penn. Camp William Penn was a camp where black soldiers trained to go to war on the side of the Union to fight against the Confederacy. It was the largest camp that they had for training black soldiers in the Union. It was here in Philadelphia. It was Lamont. So, I mean, it was Camp William Penn, and the town that was built up around it and became known as a black community is called Lamont, and it was named for Lucretia Mott. So this is a part of our history that we breathe this history in Philadelphia. We're proud black people, feeling a great sense of our own ability to fight against all kinds of segregation, discrimination, and so on. And yet segregation was rough here. Most people don't realize that it was a long time before we could ride the streetcars anywhere, sit anywhere we want to in Philadelphia. During the abolition movement, during the time of the abolition, we had here perhaps the center of what was called the Underground Railroad. That was right here in Philadelphia, the center of the Underground Railroad. And there's so much discussion about it. There are books about it. William Steele, of course, wrote the great book. William Steele's book is called The Underground Railroad. And that Underground Railroad was the invisible system, invisible mechanism by which black people would leave Delaware and Maryland and come to freedom in Pennsylvania, or either be moved to New York or to Canada. They came through an invisible network of communities, families, people hiding them, concealing them in their homes, and then taking them to different places, and whether across rivers and so forth. And this, of course, you remember, this was the place right here in Philadelphia where Harriet Tubman came. Tubman brought 300 Africans to freedom in Pennsylvania. She brought them from Maryland and Eastern Shore, Maryland. She got them from Eastern Shore. She brought them to Philadelphia. From Philadelphia, they were then they were distributed or disseminated. They were moved to different parts of the North so that they would be free, and their slave holders would not be coming after them. So we see this tradition of abolition as a very strong tradition of abolition, one that we were always fighting against the racist elements. In fact, there was something called the Pennsylvania Hall that was built here in Philadelphia. And when it was built in Philadelphia, one of the things that happened, at least on, I think it must have been 6th Street, they built this Philadelphia Hall, and it was burned down by racists. This was in the 1800s. They came and burned this building down because Pennsylvania Hall was built to be a place where the abolitionists would speak against the enslavement of black people. And then the first real protest was by the Quakers. The Quakers in Germantown, even in the 1700s, they protested against the enslavement of black people. So we had this relationship here that we feel very strongly about, and that is that Philadelphia is a city that has always had a strong free black population. And that free black population has been a population that has spoken many times in the interest of the freedom of black people. We have a whole sense of Pan-Africanism now that comes out of Philadelphia, a sense of Afrocentricity. This is a hotbed of Afrocentricity. Whole idea that black people should have an agency of their own. We should do for ourselves. We should be for ourselves. We shouldn't be beggar people. And we should speak our own special truths. These are words and attitudes and ideas that you find all over Philadelphia right now. I mean, people are independent in their thinking, and they will criticize anybody. They will speak to anybody. That's Philadelphia black.